Sarah Mitchell had been working at Hamilton Industries for 3 months when she made the mistake that would change her life. It was a Friday evening and her mind was already at home with her daughter Emma, who was running a slight fever. She grabbed her purse and coat and rushed out, leaving her laptop sitting on her desk beneath a stack of reports. She didn't realize it until 9 that evening when Emma finally fell asleep and Sarah remembered she needed to finish the Henderson proposal over the weekend. Her heart sank as she pictured the laptop sitting there in the empty office building 40 minutes away. Emma stirred in her sleep and Sarah knew she couldn't leave her. The proposal would have to wait until Monday and she would just have to work twice as hard to make up for lost time. She was making herself a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. Sarah glanced at the clock. 9:30 on a Friday night. She looked through the peephole and her breath caught. James Hamilton stood on her doorstep holding her laptop case. She opened the door slowly, her hand instinctively moving to smooth her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing old jeans and a faded college sweatshirt. Her boss was dressed in the same suit he'd worn to the office that day, though his tie was loosened and he looked tired. "Mr. Hamilton," she said, unable to hide her surprise. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said with a gentle smile. "I was working late and noticed you'd left this behind. I remembered you mentioning the Henderson proposal was due Monday and thought you might need it over the weekend." Sarah took the laptop with trembling hands. "You drove all the way here." "Sir, you didn't have to do that. I could have managed. It's 40 minutes from the office," James said. "I didn't want you to worry about it all weekend." A small voice called from inside the apartment. "Mommy." "Just a minute, sweetie," Sarah called back, then looked at James apologetically. "My daughter isn't feeling well." "Then I won't keep you," James said. He turned to leave, then paused. "Sarah, you're one of the hardest workers I've ever had on my team. Don't spend the whole weekend on that proposal. Emma needs you more than the Henderson account does." Before Sarah could respond, he was walking down the hallway toward the stairs. She stood in the doorway watching him go, wondering how her billionaire boss knew her daughter's name. The following Monday Sarah arrived early. She'd finished the Henderson proposal Saturday morning while Emma napped and spent the rest of the weekend just being a mom. They'd made cookies and watched old movies and played board games. It was the first weekend in months Sarah hadn't felt guilty about the balance between work and motherhood. She found a small envelope on her desk with her name written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a note. "Thank you for your excellent work on the Henderson proposal. I've also taken the liberty of upgrading your laptop to our premium model with better processing speed. You shouldn't have to wait for programs to load when you're working late. Best regards, James Hamilton." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. In her 3 years of working office jobs since Emma's father left, she'd never had a boss who noticed her as anything more than another employee number. She looked across the office toward James's corner suite. Through the glass walls she could see him on the phone, but he glanced up at that moment and gave her a small nod. Over the next few weeks Sarah began to notice other small kindnesses. When Emma got the flu, James personally approved Sarah's request to work from home for 3 days without making her use sick leave. When the company holiday party was scheduled, he made sure it was family-friendly in the afternoon rather than an evening cocktail event so single parents could bring their children. Sarah learned from her colleague Martha, who had worked there for years, that James had been making these quiet changes ever since he took over the company from his father 2 years ago. He'd expanded parental leave, increased the minimum wage for all employees, and created an on-site childcare center that was scheduled to open next spring. His mother raised him and his sister alone after his father left when he was young, Martha explained over coffee one morning. Old Mr. Hamilton came back years later with some story about finding himself, and James never forgave him for what he put his mother through. When James finally took over, he said he wanted to build the kind of company where someone like his mother would have wanted to work. Sarah thought about this as she watched James through his office window. He was reviewing documents with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. She'd never thought of wealthy men as having real struggles, but she supposed everyone had a story that shaped who they became. In early December, James started showing up in the break room more often. He would pour himself coffee and chat with whoever was there about simple things like weekend plans or favorite recipes. Sarah learned he was an excellent cook who made his own pasta from scratch. He learned she loved old movies, especially anything with Jimmy Stewart or Katharine Hepburn. One afternoon a week before Christmas, Sarah was wrapping a present for Emma in the break room during her lunch hour. James came in for coffee and watched her struggle with the tape dispenser. "Here," he said, reaching over to hold the paper in place while she cut the tape. "Thank you," Sarah said. "I'm terrible at wrapping presents. Emma always laughs at how messy they look. My mother was the same way," James said with a smile. "She used to say the mess was part of the charm because it meant someone who loved you took the time to try." They worked together in comfortable silence until the present was wrapped. As James poured his coffee, Sarah gathered her courage. "I never properly thanked you for bringing my laptop that night," she said. "It was incredibly kind, especially on a Friday evening." "I was happy to do it," James said. "How is Emma doing? Over her cold?" "Yes, thank you. She's excited about Christmas." "Does she believe in Santa Claus?" "With all her heart," Sarah said, smiling. "Even though she's 8 and some kids at school have told her the truth, she insists Santa is real." "Hold on to that as long as you can," James said softly. "The world takes away that kind of magic too soon." On Christmas Eve the office closed at noon. Sarah was packing her bag when James stopped by her desk. "I have something for Emma," he said, holding out a wrapped present. "I hope that's appropriate. It's just a book. Martha mentioned Emma loves to read." Sarah looked at the present, then at James. His expression was uncertain, almost vulnerable, in a way she'd never seen from him at work. "That's very thoughtful," she said, taking the gift. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," James said. "You work hard, Sarah. You're a wonderful mother and a talented professional, and you deserve to have someone notice that." Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. It had been so long since anyone had seen her as anything more than just a mom or just an employee. James saw all of her. "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" she heard herself ask. "Outside of work, I mean." James smiled, and it transformed his entire face from serious executive to someone warm and real. "I would like that very much," he said. They had coffee the day after Christmas at a small cafe near Sarah's apartment. Emma was with her grandmother for the afternoon, and Sarah felt like herself for the first time in years, not someone's mother or someone's employee, just Sarah. They talked for 3 hours. James told her about growing up watching his mother work 3 jobs to keep them in their small apartment. How she never complained, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. How he'd promised himself he would build something better, not just for himself but for people like her. Sarah told him about Emma's father who left when she was pregnant. About the fear and loneliness of those first years. About finding her strength in Emma's smile and learning that love was enough even when money was tight and the future was uncertain. "You're remarkable," James said as the winter sun began to set outside the cafe windows. "I'm ordinary," Sarah said. "I'm just doing what millions of parents do every day." "That's what makes you remarkable," James said. "You show up every day with kindness and grace even when it's hard." "That's not ordinary, Sarah. That's extraordinary." They started seeing each other regularly, always in quiet ways that felt natural and unforced. James came to Emma's school play and cheered louder than anyone when she delivered her 3 lines as reindeer number 4. Sarah helped James pick out a present for his sister and taught him how to make her grandmother's apple pie recipe. Emma adored James from the start. He never talked down to her or tried too hard. He just listened when she talked about her day and remembered the names of her stuffed animals and showed her how to play chess on Sunday afternoons. 6 months later, on a warm June evening, James took Sarah back to that same cafe where they'd had their first coffee date. Emma was with her grandmother again, and the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I've been thinking," James said, taking Sarah's hand across the table, "about what makes a family. I used to think it was just blood and biology, but I've learned it's really about showing up. About seeing someone for who they are and choosing them every day." Sarah's heart was pounding. "I love you, Sarah," James said. "And I love Emma. I want to show up for both of you every day for the rest of my life if you'll let me." "Yes," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, we want that too." They were married that fall in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Emma was the flower girl, and she took her job very seriously, walking slowly down the aisle with perfect posture while scattering rose petals with great concentration. As Sarah walked toward James, she thought about that Friday night months ago when she'd forgotten her laptop. How one small mistake had led to one small kindness which had led to everything that mattered. She thought about how easy it would have been for James to just leave the laptop for Monday or have someone else deliver it. How one person choosing to be kind even when it wasn't convenient had changed everything. James smiled as she reached him and took her hand. Emma stood beside them beaming with pride. And Sarah understood in that moment that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about small kindnesses that added up. About seeing people for who they really were. About choosing to show up even when it was easier not to. It was about a man who drove 40 minutes on a Friday night to deliver a laptop because he understood what it meant to be a single parent trying to do everything right. It was about choosing compassion over convenience, and in that choice finding something more valuable than any amount of money could buy. Sarah squeezed James's hand and said her vows and knew that whatever came next they would face it together. Three people who had learned that the best things in life often started with the smallest acts of unexpected kindness.